Ja, det kudonke snada huidne en lidolle. Ja, det kitchen kudonke snada huidne en lidolle. Adon det kudoki. Det nebekeya. Kwekenat ani kudoki ja ikeda hat genedo ado de hwe lindo ja sabaga hotsan ado ki ja ti ado de kudoki kitchen de yanke ta huidne en lidolle. Change ye hege ja Earl Tulley and she ado katne sahin shlido tohe.
Ja, she Christoph too. Want to
al sosit ati bada huint idon al kras ako ADK ja bitte da wel jish ado und da ku de hol jish und da Ecuador kiche an endo nit ado und da ku de sabe na di tai neniki ja halet au ja ku de ki ban hat indo le chok pesh ba hasane adi ki ja anta de be ja hil sos ado be ja ko ekebe nehu in the day yakun de slice card kuna idike de stanshi do ila artikne nal so snesh it nal so si deshtra adon da eben nacho ge yakun digina idike lelige Ecuador kilche hotesh atle diki ja yisi japan date en lidole ado und da hand so she yakun digi ban date en lenige ja Ko de eton kishya as balda. Benina niki ya kun hitet neniki ben nachikoki ya kodo ba nate in lidolis. Ado und da kon de tobe ina neniki kodoki a nit tobe ina at ado und da letla ho benkilta hosne. To ze to da to no hweging chita hono anle. Ado und da kon de das at ego ja die toika ligi kon di ja bek in dita kinal losla ado und da inkele LSC da aketa holongo ado und da anike toche de nil in leko digi ben nachigoki ja ekwadoki na hade de asenle digi ko ekebana hat inige ket na hanne in ledolis ako dit ja hot dolis alo kwadoki ja kodo yankil na hon lidolis shma yaji kodo kodo king kod ne lidolis jo ga dit ahi diki in leko kodo kil chodo as.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Now we're going to talk about the settlement as well as the litigation that the nation has been involved in. We've received a lot of questions about why do we not litigate our Navajo Nation claims, or why are we entering into a settlement? So we want to go ahead and explain, the difference between litigation and settlement. So to begin with, actually, before we do that, we have a special guest that just popped into the studio, and well, he'll be here in just a few minutes. That special guest might be she. All right, so back to the settlement versus litigation. The litigation is actually occurs in state court as a result of law, that federal law. And so the Navajo Nation's claims in Arizona are heard in state court. And with that, we would have to abide by or follow state law. Now we have our special guests. So we're going to pause the presentation and turn it over to our special surprise guest.
Yate Haradais Nahtagi Horoya, the Nebananta Dr. Bu Nigun, Hodoya, Onaganja Hode, Shasan Sobeninache, Shesiat Eto Hoje, the Ne, Yeguin Dash Nishigido, Yedate Nishigi, for Tobanat Enigi, Hosto How, Georgia, Little Colorado River, but Nenegi, Jano, but Dit After Ne Nasty, des Conjano To, I Yesi Ben Hidet, it the late Queen Zone, the Ne, Kadaza Asa Kushi. I yesibena nishwish Latina zanache bena nish out of the kuidishi benaznish 2010 out of 2012 out of hohot ere benatish nisho beninach siego njono benaznish out of hodina goshi Beshmans annal sos hadaliagoshi beninach hadaliado les ado shlais kajishi banat ido benyenda idos kido do les nenegi ishi be his ado les ado le demona asli o shin Beshmans an betate en dol so yanda dot in do beninach dego holje so shi at in Beshmans an yende dot jahobiga tadel do nilcho di hwaban sa kesige ha ishi adol nil di hodo asi yeda anigi she hodo yen kiln da dol ne ya huichi yedel nishigi ot ende not ani be itlenigi edi at en yen dash nishigi do Beshmans ando hoje the Department of Justice da but nenigi hoshiga haset in the Michelle na si yego do Mr. Tulley da that enigi do hoje Water Resource Department management aje da ya si yego yen dash nishigi bini nache hodo ya si ban kelta hojon do hodoshin ha hodoljish Aronle Estrado se bin de zitcha si yego ben na andistolis al cere bel do nishige Beshmans anye landa do se aro shishana do sos aronle ozedo Southern Paiute aro tenaho de jizushene kinahal gade banahat idol eye beninache bansa ha kesto benye yesip bin as nishigi ban kiltahojo to she hot o ban sada case the horo hate o the nebanant ayan se case horo ban sis case chuk adeya si ashcha hazli do njono anda o do nilchonle neznana khina tinana khet o ban na det o naso do thun khidet the chuk dishchin le o the nekhet hat enigi si dano se Los Angeles, Phoenix, San Diego, hone lao the neketa hat etro yete dan le ebinina kanda de biga to le no yen dal nishado hoto yat eto hedo le hodo the nebanan Dr. Boo Nygren do a hedo le aro peshma hasan da no senigi tishin hodina go kushin skang dates so le not end biga tadl do nil tratlet go dot iso da dio nel dianit ene nat ani dani lenigi heltaile dot ben dasit no da di nel aro shilto hot edle aro asano tanigi honne jono ben dasol nesigi hehadole aro chinesti na has tanigi da Water Commission da nenigi da speaker baits aro anot in ajapan gina nishadas enigi elto hehadole ebe hehe do hakone jono heda to alto horoshin jono hot enigi to ben na hodone do hehadole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see you. That was a good surprise. And just to let the listeners know, the president has been very active in our discussions related to this settlement. He's been very supportive. All of the staff and the vice president as well have been very, very supportive of our efforts towards getting a water rights settlement. Everyone has the same goal of bringing water to our Navajo people, to our homes, for our elders, for our children, and for our future. So we greatly appreciate that pop-in from the Navajo Nation President, Dr. Boo Nygren.
Di Cordova na huid net lido le tiki igisi ya choku diki bana hat Ecuador ba chohot an leniki ya diku da huint nigo na aji ki ya hit akonde shanshido ada hand so kwige an hiet ratot ago ashpohnetsa ko diki dat no bil adon that eben nachiko ki ya put ego ki na nishiki kodoki ya that deal what's le Ako di kochiko ba huint ingo. Diki ya HOA hand so she quige o chit nelchin nel na hadlen. Adon that do joke hot don't. Adon that dan lanes do quishi nach ba huint ingo. Ado to yal leniki to peso ki to yo at le benachin lingo ki ya eku kodi ki nit aniki ya kode Naltsos Kodoki betang kita niltsos Adon data adeki na besh apin sikis hat niniki kodoshin kitchen Jehel kedan leniki ben nachiko Ecuador diki ya kodoki bahashnetle Anahui ahi nahwana ako diki yasen da do yad leniki do bol tata Kuchiko ki ilgadet niniki ya behozeniye Nye hut ego ban si kiss. Adon dat nachiko ki dit ego at dit lechit na hat hado Allahone ke kundi ki banate into litten linigi dit ya hut Adon dat hait ego da ben don nishiki tot hitlisha dat dit niet diki ya kunchi de don dit ego chi don dit hoki diki ya kweke nebetlisha jit inle Adon detta diki benat los do letten linige peso ki ya boltra diki bel dat en leko Kujiko ke hot ya diki banate en lindoles ako diki ya ba huil ne diki Ako hot ya Ecuador ingilcho hot an leniki jo ebelagana aniko litigation Sachiko ki settlement أكوثين الآت إيجو ناكيجو بكتا هزنل ديكي كوجيكو كيج الساتشها أهن أنتوت لوس خننيكي إيجو بعد وينت إنكي هوت دولزل كوجيكو يسليني كتليكاسيكي كوات نوت ديكي يبانات إنكي بهزنو توتلين لأكو يأخد كدوين كتشنا ديت أصل.
Okay. And our resources would be limited to that is pertinent to the reservation. It's also adversarial, lengthy, and very costly. With settlement, we get certainty. We get funding for water infrastructure development. There are better tools that are available. We can work out water management agreements with the other parties. There's authorizations for water diversions and movement between states and basins, which is not available if we're to continue through litigation. And again, it's negotiated. We are at the table and we are working out our water rights claims and with our neighbors. And so we are of the position that settlement is better for the Navajo Nation than litigation at this time. So we are now on the next slide, if you're watching online, and we talk about and we're asked, about what the benefits of settlement are. And what the benefits are is real water in Navajo people's homes. And we would have that sooner than later. Substantial actualization of the nation's vision for a global Navajo water supply system and water security from that water supply system. We would be able to divert Arizona water in all 3 states, meaning the states of Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. We'd also be able to move water across basins, which means from the upper basin to the lower basin and also lower basin to the upper basin. We would have, and this is a very important point in our settlement, is that we would have meaningful access to the firmest Colorado River water in Arizona. And we have an opportunity for growth within our nation. And it's also a pathway home for our people, for those that have had to leave the Navajo Nation in order to get jobs and homes where water and other utilities are more accessible. We want those people to come home, and I believe that they want to come home as well. And so we believe that this infrastructure development would do just that, bring more opportunity and growth to the nation. And this settlement is insurance that we would be able to remain on our homeland for time immemorial and thereafter for forever.
Kodoki niri about johot aniki ha ilbes got not a jokut elshe yasaban so kesen leko. Diki kodo on kestish at and then jokade ya da il trato ko da han so shi aji ki e yana nishiki ba kuno si adon da nakada iste en le kodo tin ki keya lenigin le klojo chet keda hat enigi kun na iste le ko e diki ben nachiko ke ya e kwa ke ngelia na go shekit e to le ako e diki ben nachiko ke ya ti diki ai si e ya ko be el gat nit aniki e kodo ki be hozen to le ti tro ki e yan le hawango na e ya hato losto hawango na e ya ado ki e ya be ekendi da do le ado and ditta e ya be hozen do le ko diki hanelt e yan ke trotten le ado hade leit los e diki ben nachiko ki e ya akui ki e ba nate ado and ditta ko diki tro ki e ya also she e ya be hozen ko e ya sakan le do le ko eke trot se yino ko eke e yan ke trot se ka ni go ki e ya e ku ba ini lido le ako e diki e ya ben nachiko ki e ya ku ba huint in le ako ado and ditta alto o yisit e do le liki jo koje shi bi todo ado and ditta le a he shi to koje yo troje tra o e diki e tranat los diki e ya e bi gato le ako e diki e ya ben nachiko ki ya trogi dan tsade go ki ya chita in do le ado and ditta e ya e kundiki e ya di de bishgan nezi niniki e diki tro ajiko ki e ya e be hozen ko ki e ya e kundiki ba hunt e do le e diki e ya e kwa ke e ya be hozen no aliasad le ko kuje hos dojike da honit eniki ado and ditta hate e ko da be in di dato kodo nidi e ba hasi na iste ado and ditan kit so keton kinale ke kun digin hinane kraiki eshe ya ba kono zi ado and ditta e ya e kun digi echo iniki be hozen dole e ben nachi iki e ya kun digi ba so hote skezo e kodochi nil I dole ado and ditta e ya e ade Yahana kweki yahan dol da ben nachi kun digi chola da ki e ya hodane le ke ya to kon ya te a di ki e ya to anil tro e ya tro kon di ki ke tra kon di ki be shi ki don ke tra e ya nit e ben na che lingo ki e ya kwa ki e ya chinil in la ko e dit e ya hot e do a don de kwa ki e ya be hozen ko ki e ya le da e ya e chinil e to hot e go e ya kon de in ke na ni ke zazatan leni troche de yos in ni hielto a hot edolet a don detta skando chitligi to e ya kwigi e ya ba kunit zendo to e pata huinit a leko e dit e ya kwigi e yang in a do lesle e diki e ya panache en ligo e kodo a huntsago e yang in a do les.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tulley. So you're probably wondering, where are we at in this process right now? And we're happy to share with you that we are getting very close to having the settlement go before the Navajo Nation Council. And it is currently in the Navajo Nation Council legislative process. So we are hoping that the legislation that the Navajo Nation Council will consider, which will also include the settlement agreement, will be introduced or will be posted online through the Navajo Nation Council website either later today or tomorrow. And so with that, we wanted to provide new updates about the settlement and to let you know that the legislation is coming, and there will be an opportunity for the public to comment and ask questions about the settlement through our continued public education outreach, as well as posting your comments on the legislative website. So the comment period will be open until the Navajo Nation Council takes legislative action, which we believe will occur around May 23rd. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and continue our presentation and give you more details on what's included in our settlement that will be going before the Navajo Nation Council in a couple of weeks.
Assistant Attorney General Espino, we appreciate you being able to talk to the Navajo people and describe what the difference is between litigation and settlement. And it's important for us to be able to understand this process, to understand why we are engaged with conversations regarding settlement, to understand why it's beneficial for the Diné people, but more importantly, the Diné households that don't have running water. Today, I was in Chinle and hearing people and seeing people that were water hauling, hearing of the challenges. Last week, I was also had run into someone who had, an injury related to water hauling challenges. I know oftentimes we hear about the challenges associated with the wear and tear on our vehicles and the price of gasoline. But what we don't hear about often are those physical challenges that individuals may experience as being water haulers, being injured as they're trying to wrestle with those 50-gallon barrels, those 250-gallon plus size tanks. And it's important for people that we know that this Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement is beneficial to the Diné people for all generations of children, for masanas and chays, for aunties and uncles, and for moms and dads, and all the Achiniyaja running around. And it's important to know that these people are out there, are Diné people. I have nieces and nephews that are water haulers, and it's important for me as a principal hydrologist for the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources to help our people gain access to water. And we have, people during the pandemic were at watering points, transitional watering points that were created in places that didn't have existing permanent watering points. And so we know this reality as members of the legal and technical team who work on securing water rights for our Diné people. And those members on the legal technical team include members from the Department of Justice, including the Water Rights Unit, the Department of Water Resources for the Navajo Nation, as well as members from the Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission. And we appreciate the leadership of our Diné leaders who have also been engaged in these conversations. All of the 25th Navajo Nation members of the council have been a part of a negotiation team, those who represent communities in Arizona. And it's important for us to be able to describe that to you because it's a team effort that we're a part of. And we appreciate our president coming into the studio here in St. Michael's, Arizona, to be able to talk to you about the importance of this settlement. So we know that a large number of homes that don't have pipe water in the Navajo Nation, a lot of those homes are in Arizona. We have communities like Shanto, Kayenta, Denahotso, portions of Oljeto that are in Arizona, as well as Navajo Mountain, Chinle, Sayle Wheatfields, Cameron, Loop, Delcon, Hawk. All of those communities have more than 200 homes that don't have pipe water. And this is according to the Indian Health Service map that they have. And then we have other communities, Copper Mine, Botaway Gap, Tonalea, Forest Lake, and Rock Point, as well as Indian Wells. They have 150 to 200 homes that don't have running water. And we have more homes, Tlachi'i, Kaibato, Pinyon, Chilchimbito, Rough Rock, Lukachagai, Klagato, more than 100 to 150 homes that don't have running water. And this need is greatly needed across the Navajo Nation. On the New Mexico side, we have homes that have 0 to 100 homes that don't have pipe water. But what we know in New Mexico is they do have capital outlay and tribal infrastructure fund funding that have made it possible to be able to build that infrastructure that is needed so that we can have more homes, we can have economic development in these communities. And we can definitely see that through this map that has been created by the Indian Health Service using their data. But what we do know is there's a great need across the Navajo Nation to be able to build a secure and sustainable water supply system. As a principal hydrologist for the Navajo Nation Department of Department of Water Resources, it's important for me to be able to try to plan for that secure and sustainable water future. In many of the cities and towns, they have 40 and 50-year projections, but our Department of Water Resources for the Navajo Nation, we make recommendations to the attorneys that work on securing water rights for our nation to consider 100 years out. We're not only considering the generation that is here now, we are considering those that are yet to be born, those who want to return home to live within the four sacred mountains. Those people are the people that we continue to advocate for, to be able to secure our water rights so that we can build the infrastructure that is desperately needed across the Navajo Nation, so that we can go from surviving, so that we can move to a thriving mode with building more houses, building economic development across the great Navajo Nation. And on the eastern side of Navajo, we've had that opportunity. We have 8 Navajo communities that are receiving water from the Cutter Reservoir. And this is a result of the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. And it was a water rights settlement authorized under Public Law 111-11. Today, we have over 7,500 families that are receiving water on that eastern side of Navajo. And today, we have under construction the San Juan lateral, as well as the Kotaker lateral. Many of you may drive in between Notnageorgia, as well as Tegahodzane, Sebanito to be specific, and you see that what's being built currently, and it's important to be able to understand that we are using that water rights settlement funding to be able to gain access to surface water from the San Juan River so that we can diversify our water portfolio. And we have continued opportunity in the Navajo-Utah region to be able to have the Navajo-Utah funding to support water projects in that area. But where the greatest need continues to remain is for a large portion of our Navajo Nation, for those Navajo communities that are in the Arizona portion. Though a lot of those public water systems are challenged, they're predominantly reliant upon groundwater. We know the challenges that exist with continued drought conditions, the vulnerability that exists with those shallow aquifers is important to understand. And through these projects that we will be talking about today, we'll be explaining that infrastructure that we are proposing using funding, as well as building a project under the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Agreement that we will be talking about. Right now, we're going to go to the Nebazad to have translation.
Kodo kwagin gilchit an liniki e khad la e yan datonish jo hut ego e ya kodoki e ya gilpe hozen lindolis adon detta kundi ki e ya gilcho hot aslin le di de ke ya kwaki ki ya shjo de gits da alla ta ki e ya konda le ke ya ta o ji go do thanas la ajitan kinagan ki to dikin le nahatzes ando sha tro o je tro jo ki to alla ta ki e ya konde ki tro ki beto ye troit at the alla da shi e ya kwigen da ho hen le ko adon de tan le tsi ze jo to je betla si le to ta na hut ego e yankel hot Ki kwigel to di ki benkiche na hot nigo ki ya kodoki inkilche da nit aslein le Adon detta eja kondiki han leit lostolit haleit aben dat don niniki ekwadoki jo ein leid si inda has in lenji kondiki ba konitsen Adon detta ejan leikwaje han so shinta annistan lila konde eratit ahi kwadla ado troik ida des in leniki Adon detta eja konde anhida benkilta hot neten leko Eben nacho kige kun diki ya be eda hozen leko. Diki ya kodoki ba nate eniki koja hoz dojana ho konsto ha ajo kweke ya jo kwiki yanki keya shjod. Nle beda has don le ha ajo. Jo hut ego ya be hozen le. Adon dita di kwiki ki atkin leniki ya Kuntes dino bebit litten liniki ya kunkin nago ya kinslan adon dit da besenel adon dit isya kinda da hodlje diki jo ajago ge in ho questionan quigi yanki keya hagi da hodlon leko queki yanki behosen lindolis ako diki ben nachago kinkil johot aniki ha killa ya kun diki Trogi ja dat o ja hit los do de nekundi gi la da tronde ye leko di kodoba johot ato tronji ye adon da kundi gi beje in zel huishran da edo da de ket sin da nanils edo da de ja sei da bicha ajo kund a ye gon nata annistan leko digi ya kun digi llaho benkil da hot ne giben nachigo gi a khune hi la winsen a don da ya kun de khit go da ya bets I do khotod nil kwaki gi yan kits isigi kun digi tonda ge ba da hot ya do kwaki ya aba hono sa do le jo a ho yan da kun digi ho ketsin na nils in leniki eben nachigo gi kodo benkil khashne le Adon da ya kwadoki hand so she bidat on nishan liniki ha ila ha down lechatot los ha niniki kwadoki she bana hunt in lindolis Adon da kundi gibela gana echiko kicho project itne nke kwachiko giben dat on nishan liniki quigi git ya hut do lesen leko diki ya kwadoki ingitlan Di de kon na kidgi aden nasen da al kidden leniki John lady gi yana halon do ishigi Jokun ya troik des bedi nacho NTUA Navajo Tribal Utility Authority ajiko ki ya kwige ya beho zaniye akunde noth ingon le ho ende do ya kundi ki lago ki ya kundi ki tro ngitya hit lost kwegen akon le dal chi leniki kwacho le nana ahot sa adon da ya go nana tsabedi neniki ajiko ki ya ajiko kwige la kundi kitsa beshpatana adorle ado hut ego ya tronat los dorle adon de danle na ho kwashgo ki to hunana en leko ajiko ki ya kuntle chi lenigi kwagin kenatla kidigi ajiko ya patana adorle leko digi panache en lingo ki ya kunta dej nation lindo akoba konosen got yan le yo troda do trote beti niniki don le na njoje che akwaki ki ya latset los be hozeniye adon tan le konde ha ajon se bi kondi ki ya tranas nele da banagan ton le trote adenki latset los leko ki da betat de ko ya kondi git ati benda anishidan leko digi kumba konoseniki ya hut ego ya kodoking kilchinit adolet adon detta ya kun na njoje don le kwaje se benit hoje akwaki kilto kun digi anketla ajeho ajo shidat no digi ya na kun digi tradatin ha lonset so ki bes kwaki ya kwa benta anisto adon detta ya Aqua eke tohat losen lidoles ako digide kumbo da honet sandoles adon de tan le acho onana sto quigi benada anishin lidoles Ecuador ki yanas kitigi Ecuador kitisha island lidoles ako di tobandas an lenigi kade aita kwegi chideyos iniki yana hadlo okut ego yato klish Adot le chi iki yadlan na do kodobin that donishin linigi ebakait eto de deal se li tenako that deal nil jo kwege ba skat nit ahnle.
Thank you for interpreting for us again, Vice Chair Tulley. And we actually got a question texted, and the question is, so why is settlement better than litigation? Actually, there's 3 questions. And what was proposed in the settlement? And 3, can we ask our good friends in New Mexico to help us negotiate with Arizona for better treatment? So to answer your first question, so why is settlement better than litigation? Well, as I had covered earlier, in litigation, it is an adversarial system, and we would have to be in state court due to federal law requiring that for tribal water rights claims and cases to quantify our rights. And what comes out of litigation is a paper decree that quantifies our water rights, but it does not come with funding to help us develop our water infrastructure. And it is a very lengthy process, such as the Little Colorado River litigation that we're currently in began in the late 1970s. And we just had our trial, our phase 1 of our trial last year, and it took about 4 months to get through that trial. And phase 2 is not scheduled until 2027, and that will probably not conclude until 2028. And we would finally get a recommended decree from the special master that's part of the state court system in probably not until 2029. And that would just be to quantify our claims, our rights, our water rights in the Little Colorado River only. This settlement is for a comprehensive settlement for all of our water rights in Arizona. And so we would have water agreed to our quantification and our rights to it for both the upper basin and the lower basin. So it would cover all of the Navajo Nation in Arizona. And settlement comes with infrastructure development dollars that comes from the federal government. And we would also have the opportunity to work with our neighbors on management of our water resources, the sources of our water. And so that's very important for our future, to have those types of agreements with our neighbors to make sure that we conserve our water. I think the second question was, let's see here, what was proposed in the settlement? So we are going to go into that in detail a little bit later in our presentation. We're going to give you actual numbers for our water rights, what the quantification would be, and then also funding, the amounts of funding that is being requested in the settlement. And can we ask our good friends in New Mexico to help us negotiate with Arizona for better treatment? That I'm going to turn that over to Crystal to answer. But I do want to say that we have to always be in communication and coordination, partnership with our counterparts in all 3 states. So we do have established relationships with the Office of the State Engineer and the Attorney General's office in the state of Utah. We also have established relationships with the Interstate Stream Commission and the Office of the State Engineer in New Mexico, and as well as the Indian Affairs Department. They do play a role in tribal water rights in New Mexico. And we do have a relationship with our Arizona counterparts, and we've been in negotiations with them for this past year to get to where we are now. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Crystal and maybe talk about other partnerships that we have that are assisting us.
Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Espino. If you're just tuning in, we are talking about the proposed Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement, and we're talking about the projects that can help benefit the Navajo people. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to text 928-288-0567. Again, that number is 928-288-0567. We would love to answer your questions. And so responding to the question about having our friends in New Mexico and even Utah help us with Arizona, it's definitely beneficial to be able to have partnerships with our other state partners. The Navajo Nation spans over 27,000 square miles across Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. We also straddle the upper and the lower Colorado River Basin. And as such, it's important for us, especially with this settlement, to have the opportunity to divert water that we're talking about in this settlement to support communities in Arizona by using the Arizona water rights, but diverting from a different state, either in New Mexico or in Utah. And it's important to be able to have that because we're building infrastructure projects. We have a intake that we're repurposing at the former San Juan generating station so that that can be the intake for diversion from the San Juan River to support the Navajo Gallup water supply project that's currently under development. We also have invested Navajo Nation dollars, SIHA-SIN, and Permanent Trust Fund funding to support being able to use the former Navajo generating intake to support communities on the western side of Navajo so that we could draw water out from Lake Powell and be able to supply waters on the western side of Navajo and diversify our water portfolio, which also helps us secure and sustain our water future for our Diné people. And with this being said, we have this map that I am currently showing, but it shows the public water systems across Navajo without settlement. And we have these water systems, a lot of them are independent public water systems that are managed by Navajo Tribal Utility Authority in the Arizona portion for our Navajo communities. And it has purple lines that describe some existing infrastructure that we are currently building, and that includes the Loop to Delcon line that is supporting the water supply, that will soon be supporting the water supply that is needed in Delcon for the new medical center that has been built. There's some other infrastructure that is currently under development and being built in Tlachii, a part of the Western Navajo pipeline, and that provides that opportunity. But what we're really interested in is with settlement, so much more is possible. We can be able to interconnect those public water systems that, for example, in the Red Mesa, Arizona portion, and interconnect that public water system with Rock Point system, interconnect it with Round Rock, and down on south to many farms in Chinle, and then even connect that system to be able to connect Rough Rock, Chilchimbito, Kayenta system, and then being able to divert that water from different places, as I described, that in New Mexico, there's that intake there where we can use the infrastructure there with the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. And then we have the opportunity to divert in Halchita, Utah. The funding for Utah is only for Navajo Utah region, but within the settlement, we're planning to be able to extend those water lines to go into Arizona, but divert water in those different states in Utah and in New Mexico. I mentioned the Kotaker lateral that's currently under construction in between Sebonito and Notnageorge. That infrastructure stops at the state line because that funding that was under the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project can only be used in New Mexico. But we are proposing under the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement to be able to extend that infrastructure from the Kotaker lateral to go into Window Rock, the capital of the Navajo Nation, to go continue on into St. Michael's, where we are tonight at the KTNN studio, and going up and over the summit, going across Kindaslichi and going into Ganado, interconnecting those public water systems and going on south as well. And also important is on that Western Navajo side, being able to have an understanding of the Inahba Patuquatsi pipeline, which is an opportunity to be able to gain access of that water at Lake Powell in this settlement and bring that water along. We have a clinic that is going to be going up in Botaway Gap. A lot of these medical centers, a lot of these economic development opportunities, but more importantly, the housing for people. What is needed is the basic infrastructure, water. And we will have the opportunity to be able to have that pipeline be able to extend all the way down to Cameron, helping communities along the way in Botaway Gap and Bitter Springs, as well as Tuba City. And including in this is also extending that Southwestern Navajo pipeline, which currently connects the loop to Dalcon pipeline, but including 3 wells that we have that are currently developed in the most southwestern part of the Navajo Nation. And we also have some sea aquifer, Coconino aquifer, and Navajo aquifer projects. We have some of that on the Black Mesa region. I know we have many people in different parts of the Navajo Nation that have different opportunities for infrastructure. I mentioned pipelines for some opportunity to integrate that surface water system, but for some of our other communities that have great aquifer systems, like the Navajo aquifer, to continue to support those communities like Black Mesa, Hard Rock, Pinon areas. There's opportunity for that continued development in the Dislejin region. And so just wanted to describe that, and we'll be passing it now to Vice Chair Tulley for interpretation in Denebazal.
Ikwadon kilche hot an leniki eya kwado kan be kaloi kwadon kilche desh an leko. Ikwadoki ba hon leniki jot hoki sone neilna. Diki eya kwadoki eya kilche danit ako. Kuige naide kid. Seda ha ila benina kwichagoki isgatet lisgato haki eya highlight ebenina jagoki eya. Oyo hit no tjena hallen och ego eja tabaha jodzi o ani hut kon gat nit ago ki eja ak ebelnast cheta nahet hago hut ego eja asgadat dit as do eja adles andanil in the dole chopeni nani ki eja behozno tatil nit behozno o no diki eja bichen kitol adiki diki yisi dole Ako digi trondat losdor lechen liniki eja konde kwegenal kidigi eja oyotsatlit na halon eja kwegit adon datla eja ja na halon dort is ako digi eja in late ode gedeik itates igi digi eja ahot ako di kwajin late torche ha niniki Ajigoki eja don le yo torche John ko eja konde giba Nat anin leniki nachata Wednesday peso kun habija andeil ito kun diki chadenil an le thanas nel da hona ako kun nata altan le yo trogo adon da akwig eya nat ani bisilche da handeni piho ko again da has neniki yal adetla yenki ka nalu leko diki ko agiki eya hans sogoshin eyan le Kwaja tsana pas hapatin hat neniki ajigo ki eya jo azail in a nidiki la anana ne Akwigi ki e to trohogi ben nachiko ki e ya akwit ego ki e ya la na do le. Ado und dan le kwajon sto kundi ki e ya such ijita ado und dan le dak e hadlana ado chin linje e kwigi sto e ayedo ki e ya peshiki kwigi e la. Akwa eke e trobenat los do le ki hodlon do le. Ako hog aba kono sinko ki e yati ko eke beelgat nit ahiki be las lingo jo ohut ego e yaban si kis ohut eo e yanket so de zeniki e ya be yeltje ako hot e yan le yata heidi neniki don le tonanes de zitje aje eki e ya e hut ego e ya trosalado ko eke e bishran dodlich ado e aji ki e an le nana tsitje onana dodlich jo kwigi e ya e ben deidnish kun di ki lahoba akono sendi dada en le troch edje chejen trapedi nenigi jo aji go ki e zeil enigi hot schako olja akon de tset na jo ki e ya hawaniki at obita anneta benina niki ko eki ki e troge hand so shi aber onan linigi e benina it atotla akwigi e ya hada geneta e di ki benina kun di ki e ya hot ego e de di seto it enako e ya atod nit adon dat e ya troge bek en di dadorlit akot ego e yankil be hozen lidorlit e di ki e ya benachiko ki e kun ki man khaniya de dit ahit sopedi neniki to kodoki e yankil khododne adon dat he shema
Good afternoon, everyone. Ethel Branchin Chef, Bipatwani Nishla, Nakai Bashchin, Sitna Jenny Dashache, Aro Nakai Dashanala, East Canyon Diablo Ditnasha, Luke chapter, Aisha chapter. And it's great to be here with everyone. It's an honor to be the nation's Attorney General and to be privileged to work on something as important as this. It's been a long process. I was involved in negotiations with respect to the Arizona water rights of the nation back in 2015 through 2019. And it was very tough at that time. And it was also tough this time. It's deeply personal to me, having grown up in East Canyon Diablo, south of Loop, with no running water. And my mom still has to haul water about 20 miles one way during the summer when all the wells dry up. So, you know, the possibility of my mom having access to running water is very exciting, especially as she gets older. And Crystal mentioned the hardship, the physical hardship, and of course the wear and tear on your vehicle. And then also with intensifying climate conditions, increased temperatures in our community, our sheep need more water because they're not able to get that water from the grass, and our livestock is starting to feel the impacts of that. And so for us as a nation and a people to be able to continue our traditional way of life, we really need to make sure that we have access to water at the household level. And then, of course, coming out of the pandemic, and having worked very intensively on relief work, and seeing the impacts of what having no access to water at your household level can have for our people, and to see that become a matter of life or death. That's not something that our people as the first peoples of these lands should ever have to experience. All of the wealth that surrounds us is Navajo wealth that was taken from us. And so we should have access to these very basic things that everyone around us has access to. It's a matter of basic human rights. It's a matter of honoring that we are the first peoples of these lands. It's a matter of equity. As Americans, we should have equal access that other Americans have. And so it's very, very exciting to be at this moment and to have the prospect of a successful settlement moving forward. And it was very difficult to get to this point. All of the parties in the negotiations made significant concessions, but we also made significant gains. And I heard the question earlier about what's the difference between litigation and settlement. And I like to explain that with a pie analogy. With a settlement, you have a full pie, and you're talking with everybody at the table about how you're going to divide that pie, how you're going to slice that pie. And at the end of the discussion, everybody has part of that pie. There's nothing left in the pan. But with litigation, there's an empty pie pan, and everybody has to make a case for each little crumb that gets added back to their slice. And at the end of the process, you still are not going to have an entire pie. It's just like when you break an egg and you try to put it back together. Some of the pieces get lost along the way. People don't have adequate documentation to make the case to prove what they know is true. And so it's much better to move forward with a settlement. And we saw what happened with Hopi in their adjudication. And the recommendation that the special master made there was for 1/3 of the water that Hopi claimed. And so to avoid something like that and to maximize the amount of water that will come to our people, settlement is very, very important. And then additionally, as been mentioned before, with litigation, you spend millions of dollars and you get nothing back to invest in water delivery infrastructure to actually have what people call wet water. And that's water in people's homes. And that's water in communities. Whereas in settlement, you actually get in our case, we're going to get billions of dollars from the United States government to actually build the infrastructure that our people need anyway in order to support our population 100 years, 200 years from now. If we don't build that out of our own pocket, then it's not going to be built unless there is a settlement and we have the money coming from the federal government. So it's so critical to be able to build that infrastructure early and to have even just access to that infrastructure at all. Because, coming up with what we've asked for in the settlement is $5 billion. That's not something that we can pull out of our general fund easily. That could take a very, very long time for us to build ourselves without the help of Congress. So it's very, very important and meaningful to be able to move forward with a settlement. And we can see those pipelines going in on the New Mexico side, and those pipelines end right at the Arizona border. And what we have the opportunity to do is to continue building those pipelines and to bring Colorado River water through the New Mexico Navajo Gallup Supply Project, bring it to Window Rock, bring it to St. Michael's, Ganado, Greasewood, Dilcon, and eventually Loop. And we have the opportunity to build the initial phase of a pipeline from Lake Powell to Page to Lachey to Tuba City, Cameron, and bring that in the future further down to Loop and have redundancy and water security in our community so that if there's ever any interruption with any of these sources of water, we have a backup system. That also gives us the opportunity to stop being so heavily reliant on our groundwater. That's supposed to be there as an insurance policy for us, but we've been almost entirely reliant on groundwater as our source of water on the nation. This will give us the opportunity to change to having surface water be a primary source of water in our community so that we have that groundwater available when the surface water is no longer there. And so this is really thinking, centuries into the future to make sure that our people can remain here in our homeland forever. And so it's just such an honor to be able to work on this and to have this opportunity to move forward with something so important for our people well into the future. So thanks very much for all of the support and for having me here this evening to talk about this.
Yati adon da kun de king tamam lini kodo king kilchona akoho ki ya kun de ki ya chna hona khaleit au yati kochiko ki ilgatnit aniki be ya hot eto le joy kwiki ya achiko ki ya selkitten le ko di ki kweki ki jobe hozeno el yago ki ya di de pasla khane ot ego ya chona ati pasla khane ki Behozene ko hatahash kijo. Diki eshi ada kuyet yabatrato ne. Akon de Kujiko at Leniki Yabetot, Estipa the Canabi Yabetot, Isn Leniki Quigi ya Shanshito Quigil Adid Nit, Akon de Ardans Andeko ki Elahate Ego ki ya Quaki ki Nahatol Kish, Quaki ki Bata Wedne. Digit ya Quigina at the kitten, Leniki Jopanachiko, Gabe Hosanadorle. Ado and detta kun hand so she kun asgat nit linigi cho oyo chechen hodlon net rent ingo. Edo dat le ada huint ingo nesto peso ki alla da adonit. Diki peso ajako ki quijiko chos indo sham. Adon detta kun digi na be hobby yard leni. Kon de is this and kendi nenigi peso bit sa jaki do bit sa neliki jo diki kon diki hut ego ben dat don nish yisi ankia nke ot north adon dat de kui de adla dan doch dipeni na ya te ho wando o ye ho wan adon le Washington to adeko keep ya liki chade did but Nachigoki ya quigi behozenator listo bekait diki ya quigi quat ego yankil johana asad lane leko diki tol trada dot los joquigi ani don lay sessa anje quajo kija quigi ya hotil tla a hot ego shentla ba kono zin Ako hut ego heit ego da quige tines out kun digi chedet son lini nke traube da is ni do kun ke cheta go cheta lo ana hona ako digi ben nachiko ki ti trogi tradas lingo behozen do le heit ego da ko ekibata ho o le lata o trogi ya na do los jo digi yisiki ako Di quebet nit ago ki idorli. Ado and the quadoki or hut ego bakata dish atlandle. A coho di kun digi bahwint inigi ani nihin hitet Ado and the dan late or Jordan netabeho no sinko. A shashi donkey care not da in higa do was sing. Queki ginkinat ani gilto ahut egon cabbage hatot, so hil cat teacher. Dit hut dorli, so quadoki banatin dorli.
I can have Vice Chair Tulley from the Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission. We appreciate you being here, as well as Attorney General, as well as the Assistant Attorney General for the Water Rights Unit. You know, with this conversation today, talking about the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement, it's very heavy with legal and technical discussion about water rights. And we did receive a question that was texted in regarding asking the question, what do the medicine men think about this settlement? Have we asked? And the answer to that is yes. We have been engaged in many conversations with people and organizations across the Great Navajo Nation. We have been in many communities in the Upper Basin and Lower Basin, and specifically regarding the Hatkatlis, we have presented to the Diné Hatkatli Association on April 9th. And another entity that we also presented to, having members of the legal and technical team who are part of the public education team, is being able to present to the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission. And that occurred on April 30th. And today we are coming to you from different communities. The Attorney General and I, the Principal Hydrologist for Department of Water Resources, are coming in from Chinle. We were at the chapter house today presenting from 1 to 5. We had other members of the legal and technical team in Lukachigai, as well as Tuba City. If you are looking, you have no lunch plans and you are looking for a great lunch, we invite you to go to Hachi'i chapter tomorrow from 1 to 5. We will have members presenting in person about the Navajo proposal that will be the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement. And we will also have on May 15th from 1 to 5. Again, if you don't have lunch plans, please join us because there will be lunch provided at all these meetings at the Greasewood chapter as well. And then on Thursday, we will be in 3 places at once. On May 16th from 1 to 5, we will be in Pinon and Lupton and Theroux, being able to talk about in Pinon and Lupton specifically, we'll be talking about this Arizona Water Rights Settlement. And in Theroux, we will also be talking about the Rio San Jose Water Rights Settlement, which is our first opportunity to be able to secure water rights in the Rio Grande Basin. The Navajo Nation has the far eastern side of Navajo that is in the Rio Grande Basin. And for that, we are working as well on the Rio San Jose Water Rights Settlement. So we wanted to be able to describe that to you today as we continue with our education. Please text questions as well as comments to 928-288-0567. Or if you're watching on a virtual platform, please send a message on the chat as well, and we'll be able to answer those questions. Now going into a little more detail into the water rights settlement. For these proposed Navajo projects for upper basin supply, we are proposing to use for these water development projects across the upper basin region. And that upper basin region goes from that far Four Corners area in the communities of Isnasbus, Red Mesa, and Arizona. And as we continue on forward to Denahoto, Kayenta, as well as Aitbito, and continuing on to Lachii, Botaway Gap area. And those areas we have, for all of these projects that we're describing, we have identified water sources that we propose to use. And we propose to use for the Four Corners Regional Project, 5,000 acre feet per year of surface water. And then we continue to move across westward and using 3,000 acre feet of water. As I mentioned acre feet, though, many of you are probably wondering, what is an acre foot? An acre foot is on like a home site lease area. Those are 1 acre. And if you were to have 1 foot of water on top of that, that is an acre foot. And I just wanted to describe that to you because I know sometimes it's hard to have an understanding of that big body of water. In the Dislodgene region, we do have some, in that region, we will be relying on the confined groundwater, and that amount, is 5,172. In the Shanto area, we would be using the Navajo aquifer, the unconfined portion of that aquifer, and we would be using 3,420 acre feet per year. And for the lower basin areas, we propose to be using some of that lower basin surface water to support water in those communities. And it's important to be able to have an understanding of the water that will be supporting the communities. And in addition to this settlement, we do have other tribes that are participating in the settlement. It's important to understand that because they are partners, a part of this $5 billion settlement. And they also include the Hopi tribe as well as the San Juan Southern Paiute. And it's important to understand that they're members of this, negotiation that have been done to create the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement, because we have the opportunity to have lower basin water. And in exchange for that, the Hopi tribe has opportunity to be able to have upper basin water. And so just wanted to be able to describe that, and we'll be turning over to Vice Chair Tulley for interpretation.
Kodoba na hanen leniki ya kundi kinkilchit ako. Kwa kinke nasndal kitiki ya behozani ye. Diki ya asat ya kundi ki chitahot an leko. Ha ila benda don nishatneti dikin le na ho kostako. Ko ki ya cho ko ki ya shi bitho. Adon detta yan le kundi ki tanaznel da banaga no kundi ki aita betsatas so hanelt ya tho jo kuige na ite kido ya hard shot trota hard la trohod lo kundi ki eya nihilisha to lil adon de tanal so sigi be hada to nil hanelt eya eha kizo echito in akon de di ki ha giziki eya chokundi ban so kestorle de keya banal sos hawan bakasa aniki diki alla ko hot zoko jo diki na kidneys not tin ato und de tallacho onana na kidneys atino se pido na kidneys atino a se pi ato nan a hut ego to nana na kidneys atin se pi des is et de anko kwege sa anko ha schnell od geti kundi ki trogi ba yata ki jo kweki ki ya keya has anke kweki ha wambanal sos hodlogo diki at ende ki bi topi hadel bindo alla this is go jo kwiki ya alta beti nenle diki ya kwiki ya beta anishin lindorle ajiko ki ya chedeto in Adon de takun de belkeda honit eniki ilto kis ani o zebeti neniki ilto kwiki ilto kundiki abel oltha na hallo ya kundiki hale ya kundiki ilto ajiko ilto betet adon de tabayotsen hol yeheki ilto nana diki ilto ya kwiki ilto diki trochito ile ko hilndal nish adon de ta alga kuno zendo le chohut ego yasat leniki benachiko kwiki belisha de nidzen kudo shmayajen leni agatit ahit sohyach ohona kundi yakis ani nlahte kundi ki nal sos yahayil sozo kadena khana hotot al nigo toy yikhet kunelt yan nihigra todles adon detta nledes sepetin doba strana khego kunelt etodles to quinilt etodles akhut ego ya chohona ande akoti tradels anas sonahallo alla akot kundi ki babaja alias linten leko diki benachikonil ingo benina kuntrat nit anachiko ki ayat leto la na to let adon data diki akut ego ban sikesen leko diki John lay kweki ki benaide kitten leniki John lay sebetin doba astrana chego de schneniki jo quinzago adol tlat quadocha o zi do askan gota do na tina chegota na do shlatina chegoko nes na tina chego ochudnen zago de dol tlat diki kundiki trogi benachiko ki Balch dat il nilto kundi ki chedeinil indole to chiyol indole yek en de dadole to ade shingiche na ol ta hoshi dat kunda hawa ko keya hodole ta neniki hodloko dit yatole adon de ta kuchishata achiko ki kundi ki banate en leniki to jo tro en lenik ton leniki yan le besenel Ado and detan late zizige ado tahilin adon le ajiko ki ya kweketro banahat inigit kumba johit aniki ajiko ki ya disdain digi khanas neleta banaganako kwiki ki ya akut ego ya chito in leko digi benachiko ki ya kundi ki nikilishana de ne lindo le adon detta late ojo kundiki nana ahatsa niniki ajiko kilto trogi adeko kilto beja aliato yachedati inle kodoki when sogain habakasa adole.
Yeah, Vice Chair Tulley for being able to describe that. We, all of these projects come with funding. As we've heard from the Attorney General branch, hearing about the need for the funding. A lot of federal partners do have money out there right now, but their money is not at the scale that we need the money. The money that we need is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that need is so great that combined with the funding for not only for the Navajo Nation, but also for the San Juan Southern Paiute and the Hopi tribe, creates a $5 billion project funding that is needed in order to develop infrastructure. So through this Northeastern Arizona Indian water rights settlement, we have that opportunity for that paper water right claim. But more importantly, we have the opportunity to have funding so that we can build these bulk water supply projects in order to continue to have that water that is needed to connect the 30% of people that don't have running water across the Navajo Nation in the Arizona portion. And so when we think about the Four Corners Project, which is in that East Nesbus, Red Mesa, Arizona region, and southward down to many farms and Chinle, that amount is $760 million that is needed for that project. For the Kayenta region, we need $195 million for that regional area, and the needs in the upper basin for groundwater projects for local projects is $280 million. For the Inapa Pa to Wakwatsi pipeline to Tuba City, Cameron, and Moenkopi, that project cost is over $1 billion. And we also have the Southwest Navajo Regional Project. That funding need is nearly $130 million. The Ganado Regional Project area is almost nearly $240 million. And the Lupton area needs are $194 million. That Cotaker lateral extension from that San Benito, Arizona, New Mexico line, bringing it on westward, coming towards, near the studio area, across the summit, taking that water to the Ganado region. That Cotaker lateral extension is $377 million. And we have the Net people in the Tzlitchin region and that Black Mesa Regional Groundwater Projects area, that funding need is $188 million. And so just to give you an idea of the project needs that are across this funding region, we not only including these projects, we also have some funds that are needed. And one of them includes the Navajo Renewable Energy Project. We need to be able to transmit this water across vast topographies, changes in elevation across the Navajo Nation. If you've ever driven along 264, continuing on west, you know those changes in topography. Or if you've driven along Highway 89 on the far western side of Navajo, either going between Page and Flagstaff, you've seen those changes that are needed across those areas. And the same on the East Nesbus, Red Mesa, Arizona region as well. And when we think about that, we need renewable energy project funding. So we have that amount identified for the project as well. And it's important to be able to understand that need remains. And it's $40 million to be able to support that project need. We also have other funds, including the Navajo Operation Maintenance and Replacement Fund, $230 million. That helps support the operation, maintenance, and repair costs. Anyone that has a chitty across the Navajo Nation, we know that you need to be able to do maintenance if you want that chitty to continue to run for miles and miles. And the same with water projects. We can't just be able to develop these water projects without having the funding needs to support operation, maintenance, and replacement. We also have funding for, so that amount is $230 million. We need funding for Navajo Agriculture Conservation Fund. This is including funding for all you ranchers out there, as well as all of you farmers. And that amount is for $80 million. And this supports to improve historically irrigated Navajo farmland, as well as the repair of stock ponds, windmills, wells, and for the maintenance and the repair. And we also have water acquisition fund for the amount of $28.8 million. And that provides the opportunity to secure more water rights with that opportunity for that fund. And so just wanted to be able to describe that. And as we continue forward, we will continue in the Nebazad, and then we will proceed after that.
Di Cordova hot an leniki ya ko degi ya ligin kitche world katselin le Di Cordogi kogi chadedo in anelt ya bahadlido le din le ko de keya dingo kita hotizzo isnas pas ajiko adon da naho konso keda hot eniki ko diki ya peso babacha ador nilati neniki ya sos nezatin doba stratin de ligi hunelt ya ben da donish diki jo hut ego ya beho zaniye di kun kinat nal kidiki ya kwa ki ba konosen lindole adon de tan late le jinjo to nana ajago ki ya aslahate nes natin doba se betin doba se bi de mil digi de mil soki quigi ya ben da don sho hut ego ya lana hut ego ya nitsen adon de ta kun digi bayotsen hat niniki tobe in hat niniki twa inapa ajago ki ya kun digi bijet la balia digi ya part to kwaki digi ya akwa ki sato kis ani ki bije obe betit lit digi shi od yeki ya inapa ohut ego shi od yela ako digi sto quigi ya peso ki sto baja alia sladenes natin dob nes kwaki ki ya ohut ego ya pe alia sli digi slade de mil to sta atta mil sohoki quigi ya ahut ego ya ligi quichi de don il adon de tan le shata achigo nan achigo ki kehonot iniki ya jo torch in the don late season achigo ki ya to ya ligi ni khapa kwaki ya baja alia ako ne satin roba anatin hast quigi ya de mil sohoki hut ego ki ya chide don il ku digi bach hot Nhikwedo ki hut ego ki yalchi dil in lingo ya anza gona hodo jish ebinina ya Washington a day ho wando o ye ho one adon the Washington a large da sadagi dikin has three President Biden ajiko ki ya biyadligi na ido lito ku digi aita na kunzen digi ben nache dadil kalko digi na dadil kat ati ya ku digi at go ki bedaton dol sosen leko adon de tatina lo shigi to nana to ya ligi pape ni kid ado ben da don sto ku de bebedan da do legi to hut ego to bedal kan lido le adon de eda de ye kun da no ke shigi to ajiko ki ya chideo in leko kwedo ki ya kwedo ki maya jen lini ya kwedo nkitna had na en lido le
Oh, yeah. I think I want to talk a little bit now about, I'm not sure we have this slide in our presentation, but I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the timeline that is in play here. There's really kind of 4 phases to this settlement process. So I want to make sure people are mindful of that. The first phase, sort of the gatekeeping phase, was to arrive at a settlement with the Hopi tribe. The other parties were not willing to talk to us unless we had a settlement with the Hopi tribe, because in the past that has been very difficult. And so we tackle that. Well, going back to March, we had our Supreme Court oral arguments where our water rights were very much at stake. And then in April, we had our opening oral arguments for our LCR adjudication. And on April 15th, right prior to that oral argument, we had a leadership meeting with the president, speaker, Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission, and of course, legal and technical staff. And we talked about the importance of settlement and the opportunity to really maximize the amount of water coming to our people in our community. And so we all committed to go ahead and move forward with settlement efforts intensively. And so that began even while or even before the litigation trial began. And it was one of the longest trials in Arizona history. It ran from April 23rd all the way until August 8th. And so, that almost every single day, oral arguments were being given, cross-examination was happening. We had numbers of witnesses testifying, trying to make the case to maximize the amount of water that would come to the nation. And so even while that was happening, in June, on June 23rd, we met with the Hopi tribe and we had our initial negotiation session, and they seemed very open to settlement. So we continued to work with them all the way into August, September. And in September, we felt like it was time to reach out to the other parties, that we were going to make it through that first phase of settling with Hopi. And Hopi was committed to arriving at a settlement. So we reached out to the other parties, and that's the next phase, settling with the state parties, the non-Indian parties. And so that is where we are right now. We have that settlement with the non-Indian parties, and we've been working very intensively around the clock, really, especially this week, the last week, to try to finalize the legislation and the settlement documents. And this is a tremendous settlement. It's a highly complex contract. It's over 200 pages. And so there's a lot of things in there. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of things we had to take into consideration to arrive at this point. And so this is, if we approve this settlement, when we approve this settlement and the other parties move forward as well, we will have completed the second phase of this process. And then we are already going to be sharing the settlement agreement with Congress, getting them up to speed. And Congress is the third phase. So what we do is we arrive at a settlement with the other parties. We arrive at terms that we all agree with. And a settlement agreement is it's a contract. It's like a bill of sale. When you sell your horse and you want to cross state lines, you write out your bill of sale, documenting what happened. I sold my horse to this person for this amount of money, whatever it is. And it's a piece of paper that memorializes, that writes down what your intentions were and what the deal was. And so that's what this settlement agreement is. It explains the terms of our deal with respect to a lot of different things. So we have arrived at that final settlement agreement, and then all of the parties need to approve it. So the council will need to approve it, the president will need to sign it, and then the board for different entities will need to approve it, the governor will need to sign it. But meanwhile, we're starting that congressional process. We've already done outreach to members of Congress. We've already identified sponsors, and those folks are being briefed as soon as this document becomes public, as soon as the nation drops its legislation. That document will become public. We can share that with people on the Hill and really start intensively briefing them. And we are ready to go. In fact, there's a meeting tomorrow to begin that process with some of the Senate folks. So this is all in motion. And we are anticipating having hearings before the House Natural Resources Committee in June, as well as the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. So there'll be those hearings that are necessary to move that federal legislation forward. There's something called a markup. And then, of course, there's going to have to be action in the Senate and the House to approve this. And we're at the end of a congressional session. We're on the brink of elections. And so there will need to be action before the end of the year in order for this legislation to be approved by the current Congress. And of course, we are pushing this very hard because this is a very favorable time. There's a lot of support for settlement of Indian water rights with the current administration. So we want to take advantage of that, certainly. And we don't have to wait. We don't want to have to wait to move all of this forward. So that's the third phase, is getting this through Congress, getting it approved. And then the fourth phase is after it's approved, Congress isn't going to just rubber stamp this agreement. There are going to be other states that are going to weigh in that have an interest. There's 7 states that are part of the Colorado River Basin, and some of them might not agree to all of the things that we agreed to with the state of Arizona. For example, we're asking for some very ambitious things that have never been done before in an Indian water settlement because of the fact that we're the Navajo Nation, and we are unique. We're one of the largest. We are the largest Indian nation in the country, and we extend into multiple states. And so one of the things that we're asking for is the ability, the necessary flexibility to be able to access our water in all 3 states. And that's not something that's ever been done before, because this would be Arizona water being drawn in New Mexico and Utah in addition to Arizona. So that's an example of something where some of the other states may not agree to that. We were already doing outreach to those states to kind of lay the foundation and educate them on why this is necessary. So we're hoping that that will not be an issue, but these things may become things that don't make it through, that Congress doesn't authorize or that Congress prohibits. And so if that happens, if Congress passes and approves a settlement that it doesn't match what is in our settlement agreement that we've agreed to with all the parties, then we enter this fourth phase. And this pretty much always happens in an Indian water rights settlement. Congress rarely just signs off on a settlement. So we'll enter a conforming phase where all the parties and our attorneys will look at what Congress passed and we'll look at what the parties signed as their settlement. And then we have to change the settlement, edit it so that the agreement stays within the parameters of what Congress has authorized. So Congress will kind of set the rules on what is allowed for the agreement, what the scope of the agreement can be, and then we'll have to just modify. Usually it's not tremendous modifications. So then we'll just edit the agreement so that it's within the boundaries of what Congress has authorized, and then all the parties will sign the document again, and that will be the final settlement. So again, it's a 4-phase process. The first phase was arriving at a settlement with the Hopi tribe, which we've completed. The second phase is having settlement with the non-Indian parties at the state level, and we have completed that. We're sort of closing out the completion of that because our council needs to approve the settlement, and also the boards have to approve it. The governor has to approve it. So there's still sort of final sign off by these parties, but at least we have a final document that all the parties can look at and determine whether they want to support it. And we've been very, very engaged in the negotiations. Our primary negotiators have been the Assistant Attorney General, myself, Chief Legal Counsel to the President, and we are guided by our technical team who are in the negotiating room with us, and additionally by our negotiation team that was appointed by the Water Rights Commission. And that team is composed of a number of council delegates from Arizona, as well as the speaker, and then a bunch of technical and legal and technical staff, and some appointees of the president as well. So that team actually is the team that council will be delegating to in their legislation to sign off on the conforming changes. But in any event, every week we met with that negotiation team essentially, and we briefed them on where things were in the negotiations. and they helped us sort through. They gave us guidance on positions we should take, things that were unacceptable to the nation as we entered into settlement and compromise with the other parties. So that second phase, we're just closing out that second phase now. And then the third phase is going to Congress, getting their authorization. And that a big part of that will be funding as well. And then the final process is just to make sure that our settlement agreement stays within the boundaries of what Congress authorizes. And then we'll take the document to the court and have it entered into judgment by the court, and that will be the finalization of the process. So actually, that actually makes it 5 steps. It's a lengthy process, and you really have to have a lot of patience to work in water rights because these things take a long time. And we can see that here because this claim was filed in 1978. And here we are now, 46 years later. The nation filed its initial claim in 1985. So it's taken a while to get here. There are lots of people who have led us to this point. And we're fortunate to have really strong leadership right now that is committed to getting water to our people. So that's where we are now. And I'm going to hand things over for translation to Vice Chair Tulley.
Aquí had la Kodoshama, Kodon Kilchuin Asserlatin. Di Kodol Kewena Ago, Halate Ea Kewena La Chohut Ego Ea Naide Kits at Latin Lenko. Di Kodoki Ea Bahwind, Enigido Kodon Kitatos Sauce and Lenigi Koje, was Dojike not Enigi, Jo Diki Ea Disdin Doba Strana Hayata. Ita Bahwind Ingo Ea Hahol Gij Latin Lenko. Kadesh Latin Naha Ako. Diki ben Nachigo, Gi Yakun, den late Lord the Kedahat, Eniginat Anish Chin, Diki Yakojahos, Doja Kedahat, Enigi and Nigo. Nihia Gibbetsin Stlejino, Lenigi, Nabeho, or Zay, Adon the Tabayotsin, Elchidat no be. Ha late at all, Nitigi Quadon Gilchoto, Adon detta ebeden na eia kuntiki eian kitato no nil sozo eia ba neit into letin kieto kodo heit ehekota eia kuntinki ka keho te didit inten leko. Ako diki eia nas anasil gesto let ako diki eia beshpahasa anen leniki eia kuntiki betaton dolsos. Ajikon big iatio, Banahat in Ladolis. Ado anas nate skenjo, Yakunde, Quake President Nigreen Yahia, Ajiko, to a kunginat Z, Ajiko, ki Yabiji la, ya anas nanat gestolit, Diki ya deho wando, yeho one beti, Neneki. Ad Washington diki to ya nada dot ink. Adiki ya ankichita, konkicho ki ya kun diki ayat eho yankichita, ki ben nachiko ak adiki pohonet sa dorlit. Ajiko ye lata aslinko ki ya cho shin sabi na dotso. Edota sadat sahanate dozo. What ending Kikodoban Saha case Doban sis case dingo yankima Kodoye hatzi do ya seed lako epen not on nish apo honet za do lit Slahoshin yach and not nehoshin chede do lincho epi basala Ado and dita kunde Nahas twin lini President Biden ebetato nato hish ajiko kibetato ni betato so zobaji lago ki nas not dolhish ajiko pana hat into leto ya liki kundi ki behozano bacha ta dolnik akonde etish what no sinko ki yati konde tatnas nile kundi ki nal sosin kiche elia nal sos you see that na kidneys at ding that's what ego nal sosigi sadigi bikisanello diki ya kun kitchen hodol nito ngechen hod ya go ki an hidat no il adon detta tra nazna la kun digi aje sahna atleho to kun digi sa beta na hodit ai edota na sos la bakato nit o ke seats a hot ego pa huint indole adon detta kun the agency council beti neniki to to Ecuador yabiche benato neto kundiki aita sa yelata asli niki ke seats niki gato seats adon de tan late o de koki belkeda huit eniki kundiki John late so the zenba hawango a kongo yankta moko adiki so the zenda dates ito ada da batra kundiki to hut so the zenigi to bol tra adon de tan da hatlagi to kunde hatrali da darlini kunde hit da lisnit adot so the zenda adliago si la na to le diki ben nachigo ki landa le ako diki kwadoki na sources kan go she yasal source do le beshma hasa anabiche ne Ado and detta kwadoki shehut ego a kes zindo shehut ego shit eto nigo to sadiki kwa shla che hut ego na hahuido atn leko diki kun diki o ke na hanne ko hut ego ba chohot asadlin le ado and detta kun diki bache benad ni to leten leniki kun jo tojana na to le kadiki ti chipa wint eniki je he hashiche ko ki kun ya den tin do le ko kwadoki in hilisha shla do le
Yeah, Vice Chair Tulley, that Nana. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here with you tonight. We look forward to your comments as we have the New Mexico Water Rights Settlement, which is called the Rio San Jose Water Rights Settlement, was out there, as well as the Arizona Water Rights Settlement. And being able to have your public comment, your voice matters to us, your input matters, and we are accepting comments. And that exception of comments can be you can email comments to comments@navajo-nsn.gov or general@nndoj.org. You can mail comments in regarding the water rights settlement that we discussed this evening, the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement, to the Office of Legislative Services, P.O. Box 3390, Window Rock, Arizona 86515, or you can fax them to 928-871-7259. And these comments are accepted up until the Navajo Nation Council hears the legislation during an in-person session. And as we have this, it's important to be able to have your comments that we have, your questions that we have, and we will now be turning over to the Attorney General.
Okay, go ahead, Crystal. So we do have a question from Percy Deal from Big Mountain. And he has a number of questions. One is, has the legislation been introduced? He says, time is getting short. We cannot wait any longer. River water we are claiming is getting less and less. Water in the washes and the aquifers are getting fewer and fewer due to drought. Are we ready to submit to Congress? So I've addressed this in a previous comment. The legislation is currently with Office of Legislative Services, and so that legislation will drop today. And so we were thinking it would happen during this radio session, but we've not yet received notification that it has posted. But if you check later this evening or in the morning, that legislation should be posted. And we agree the timeline is extremely short. We were trying to have a final settlement by March, but we were not able to get there with the other parties. But we are here now, and we have interest from congressional leaders who want to sponsor and move this legislation forward. And we are ready to submit to Congress. As soon as this legislation posts, we're going to hand the settlement agreement over to congressional staff. And we have the first briefing session with them tomorrow. The next question is, when will council place this legislation on their agenda for approval? Currently, we are expecting council to act on the legislation on May 23rd. And then another question is, are the Hopi Tribal Council taking action soon? Hopi's council will convene within days of our council approving this settlement, and the same thing holds true for San Juan Southern Paiute. So everything, once Navajo approves the settlement, everything's going to fall into place. Everybody else is going to start moving quickly on their approvals process. But that doesn't stop us from moving forward in Congress. We're going to be submitting letters from the attorneys from all of the parties, saying that we're all recommending to our client that they approve this settlement, and that will start the process of Congress moving forward with our legislation. And then another question is that there was a decision on May 9th by the Department of Interior to conserve 3 million acre feet of the Colorado River through 2026. And the question is, what impact will this have on the amount of water the nation is claiming? I'm going to hand this over to Crystal.
Thank you for the question. In Zitlansa, we're grateful for Percy coming out to many of the meetings and others from Big Mountain being able to go to the presentations. Regarding the operation, so the Colorado River is operated by the Bureau of Reclamation, and currently those guidelines are expiring. There's currently a supplemental environmental impact statement that is in place from 2024 to 2026, and it's a supplement to the 2007 interim guidelines that operate the Lake Powell and Lake Mead. And with that being said, the 2007 interim guidelines expire in 2026, and so it's important to be able to have a replacement for that. The Navajo Nation is a part of the conversations with 38 sovereigns, and the sovereigns being the 30 tribes in the Colorado River Basin, as well as the 7 basin states, and including the federal government. And we have participated in public comment periods regarding the supplemental EIS. When that was out, we have provided comments regarding verbal and written comments as well to the Bureau of Reclamation regarding our concerns associated with the operation of the reservoirs in the Colorado River Basin. And many of those public comment letters can be found online by Googling Bureau of Reclamation, and you can look at the tribal section for those letters. And many of our concerns are associated with our water rights that we have for municipal water supply, as well as domestic water supply, and including irrigation. So just to be able to describe that to you, that the Navajo Nation has been very vocal in these conversations with the federal government and the 7 basin states. We will now continue to proceed with questions, and we will now go to the Assistant Attorney General Espino for the Water Rights Unit.
Thank you, Crystal. So another question from Mr. Deal. By the way, Percy Deal, these are very good questions, very well thought out questions. His next question is all that needs to be done by Congress must be done and approved before November 2024. Is that doable? If not, are we facing uncertainty? So yes, we would like to have Congress take action as soon as possible. As the AG mentioned, this year is an election year, and we are facing uncertainty as to the outcome of that election. And we know that the current administration is very supportive of tribal water rights settlements. And so we want to be a part of this favorable time for our water rights settlements. So with this being the end of the congressional session, meaning 2024, and also there may be a different outcome as to who our administration may be, we actually call this a lame duck session. And in fact, lame duck sessions are a period of time when prior Indian water rights settlements were approved by Congress. And so we want to make sure that we get our settlement, our legislation in Congress as soon as possible so that we can be considered, our settlement can be considered along with other Indian water rights settlements that are being considered. And so in 2020, we saw that the Navajo Utah water rights settlement was in fact passed right at the end of that session. And we're hoping not to go right up against that clock like we did at that time. But we know that this is an important time to get the water rights settlement through Congress, and hopefully we'll see that happen.
Thank you so much, AAG Espino. And we also have a question from Ed Vicente, who is asking how large the settlement legislation document will be, like in terms of how many pages total it will be. And so it will be anywhere between 600 to 1,000 pages. As I mentioned, this is a very complex settlement. It addresses all of the nation's water rights claims in the state of Arizona. It includes Upper Basin Colorado River claims, Lower Basin Colorado River claims. And so it's going to be a tremendous package. And that's why we've worked so hard to do education, public education leading up to this point, so that people will be familiar with the terms of the settlement. But what we're going to do to assist in this process is we're going to have printed copies sent to each of the chapters. So there will be at least one copy at every single chapter that people can reference in hard copy and hopefully can make Xerox copies of with the permission of the chapters. And then additionally, we'll be printing additional copies for larger chapters. If you individually would like a copy, please contact us. We'll have social media things out on the internet. You can email us at general@nndoj.org. Again, that's general@nndoj.org, and we'll process your request. And then you can also come by the Department of Justice personally. The legislation will be available on DIPS, which is the Navajo Nation Council's Office of Legislative Services distribution site. So you should be able to go to that page and find the legislation. Or again, you can just email us or call us or come by the Department of Justice in person. Our number to call to make a request is 928-871-6345. Again, that's 928-871-6345. And we will do our best to get copies out into the community as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Ecuador kitchehot ameke ya ku diki ya diki aje na ol kitselin le akohode ya kodokin kitishata ilian leniki ya kunne hidole adon de hand sogoshi ya ku diki banate eniki in hiesto hand sogoshi ya ben yelche not zen lidole adon de sabeta na hodit hinle tratna zen de banano ku diki beta alia ya becheta alia Ako diki na sosiki yisita tra. Ako strad nezatindo alla at the media jitsida hui de tra dat ebenina ya kundiki alla be el yago kwadon kicheta do nitin leko. Diki ben nachigo ke kwadon kilta hui neki shashito benaido kita do les. Adon de kundiki sanada at leniki kuhan so she behozen ko atid nitin leko. Diki sanada at leniki kund skato Escargo ki yan le kundi ki nebekia tribeti neniki ein le yo torture do yo torture article ki yapelti sanelje ha kishi kwek yapetle had le lidole adon da torji le ke to han so she yakundi ki tobe et niki to Kodoki ya ba huint ito han so she but so hot the zen lidole quick ya hot edole diki benachin linko ki diki honotoro adon da skago ki ya kwaje hos doje Beshbahas ani hanat jahagi ya hot quadodole ako when so de yankil da hasid net do ke ya te ho in ke do